Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Leviticus chapter 4, verses 1 through 35. And you better put your running shoes on because I'm intentionally going to try to go through this one rather fast. It's a long chapter, a lot of verses, a lot of repetition. But what I want you to know, whole chapter here, is that sin affects others. There's a dirtiness that happens when we sin, and it doesn't just affect us. That would almost be nice and comforting if your sin and my sin only affected yourself. But what happens is when we sin, it affects others. And so there's a purification, there's a cleansing that needs to happen. This is signified in this sin offering, in this guilt offering, is this purification of yourself and the others around you. That's what this offering is all about, and it is for particular sins. So, reviewing the 5 types of offerings: the burnt offering, that's the whole, everything is burnt up. It's the foundational offering of bringing us before God. It's then the grain offering, giving this idea and this flavor of a meal and fellowship with the Lord. The peace offering, then it kind of comes to a culmination, this peace offering, where the worshiper and the priest and the Lord partake of this meal together. Remember, the Lord gets the best. He gets the fat pieces, my utmost for his highest. And now we come to chapter 4, discussing this sin offering, or what would be a better translation, in my opinion, would be purification offering. Other smart people agree with me. Obviously, the translators of the ESV thought otherwise. But this signifies the purification from particular types of sins. In specific, we're going to look at ceremonial, is the idea of being unclean in the various rules that we will see later on in the book of Leviticus. And then, so the sin offering is from particular types of sin, whereas the burnt offering signifies the offering for the totality of the sinful nature. And so this is specific sins that have done, and you come and offer this at the temple to clean up the sin and the effects of sin. I think you can see that there are principles in our life today. When you sin, it really messes up other people, and there needs to be healing that happens. There needs to be restoration that happens. We're going to look at restoration in the next offering, the guilt or the restitution offering. So let us go through. This is where you need your tennis shoes on. I took 3 minutes to give you an explanation, overview. Now we're going to run fast through here because we're going to talk about different types of people and what they're supposed to do when they sin unintentionally and they find out that they've been doing things wrong. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, if anyone sins unintentionally, you didn't realize it was wrong." And this is helpful for us today. So much for the running shoes business, right? But this is important for us today. You say things that you don't realize really hurt somebody, and if you realize what you're doing is wrong, well, then you need to step up and do something about it. But if anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and does any of them, if it is the anointed priest, so we're talking about if they've messed up in any of the commands. Now, part of these problems for the Israelites are going to be the ceremonial laws of, certain things they shouldn't touch or eat. And we're going to see these laws exhibited later on. But this is a lot of those particular cleansing of ceremonial laws that they're going to do. So what happens if the anointed priest does it? That's the one of the priests that are worshiping before the Lord. They're going to bring a guilt in this, thus bringing guilt on the people. He shall offer for the sin that he has committed a bull from the herd. You got to use the best for this one, without blemish, to the Lord for a sin offering. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, lay his hand on the head of the bull, and kill the Lord before the bull. Before the Lord. Those of you that have been reading the previous chapters, this is hopefully you're receiving a little bit of reward on here, because this is similar language, and you should be able to follow along with me a little faster. Those of you that went through Exodus, seeing these different places, hopefully you're even beginning to picture these places in your mind. that the Old Testament way of worshiping the Lord. Again, remember, this is no longer the way we do it. All of this has been removed because of the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Verse 5, and the anointed priest shall take some of the blood of the bull and bring it into the tent of meeting. This is important because it's the priest. They're bringing it inside, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle part of the blood 7 times before the Lord in front of the veil of the sanctuary. That because of the priest's nature of connecting the people to the Lord, there's a special cleansing that needs to happen. There is a fellowship between the Lord that is hurt. It's hurting the relationship between the people and the Lord, and there needs to be purification here. We see that when pastors sin, when I sin, and we see other famous pastors sin in a great way, it hurts the people of God in a greater way because they have somehow looked up to him. Now, we shouldn't be looking up to pastors. Our ultimate hope is in Jesus Christ. But a great teacher that you followed, and then they have sinned in a great way. It hurts. It hurts your relationship with God. I've experienced that a couple different times in my own life, and so we have to remember. This is reminding us that pastors, Sunday school leaders, leaders in the church, when you sin, you're affecting other people's relationship with the Lord. Perhaps they're going to stop going to church because of your sin. Things it needs to be taken care of in a right way. Verse 7, and the priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense before the Lord that is in the tent of meeting. Remember, this is that altar place in front of the curtain where incense was offered up to the Lord and burnt up to the Lord, representing our prayers. We need to always remember that our sin also affects our prayers to the Lord. In fact, husbands are told if they are not in a good relationship with their wives, that their prayers will be hidden or will be hindered. And so Peter tells husbands, you better be living with your wives in an understanding, good way, because if you don't, your prayers to the great Lord Almighty are going to be hindered. Again, I think this is a principle we gather here as well. Let's get your shoes back on. We're going to speed back up. And all the rest of the blood of the bull he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. We've seen that before in other places. And all the fat of the bull of the sin offering he shall remove from it, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is on the entrails, and the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them, at the loins and the long lobe of the liver, he shall remove with the kidneys, just as these are taken from the ox of the sacrifice of the peace offering. So we're taking the best. And the priest shall do what? Burn them on the altar of burnt offering. But the skin of the bull and all its flesh, with its head, its leg, its entrails, and its dung, all the rest of the bull, he shall carry outside the camp to a clean place, to the ash heap, and shall burn it upon a fire of wood. On the ash heap it shall be burned up. So the fat offered, the rest is taken outside and burned outside. No fellowshipping is happening in this sacrifice. So if the whole congregation of Israel sins unintentionally, so we saw it was the priest. Now we're talking about the entire people. They're sinning unintentionally, and the thing is hidden from the eyes of the assembly, and they do any one of the things that by the Lord's commands ought not to be done, and they realize their guilt. They realize they did something wrong, and now they're going to make it. When the sin which they have committed becomes known, again, a great example for us to follow. When you realize you mess up, why don't you take responsibility for it? And don't think I'm just talking to you. I got to talk to myself too. When you realize you've done wrong, take responsibility for it and make it right. Go through the process of making things right. There was a process, a sacrificial process in the Old Testament. Now there's a process now of restoring and cleaning up things, messes that have been made within your relationship. So when the sin which they have committed becomes known, and the assembly shall offer a bull from the herd for a sin offering and bring it in front of the tent of meeting. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord. The elders, because they're representing the people. And the bull shall be killed before the Lord. Then the anointed priest shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting. Again, it has to come inside because this is the entire nation doing it. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the veil. And he shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar that is in the tent of meeting before the Lord, because this is the whole congregational sin. And the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. In all its fat he shall take from it and burn on the altar. Thus shall he do with the bull as he did with the bull of the sin offering, so shall he do with this. And the priest shall make atonement for them. They shall be forgiven. And he shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it up as he burned the first bull. It is the sin offering for the entire assembly. Continuing on, verse 22, when a leader sins unintentionally any one of all the things that by the commandments of the Lord his God ought not to be done and realizes guilt. Now we're talking about a leader. We're outside the whole congregation, outside the priests in the religious realm. It's a leader. Or the sin which he has committed is made known to him. He shall bring as his offering a goat, a male without blemish, and shall lay his hand on the head of the goat. Notice it's a goat, not a bull this time. A lesser animal, a less expensive animal, and kill it in the place where they kill the burnt offering before the Lord is a sin offering or a purification offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, not inside the tent, just on the offering, the brass altar in front of the tabernacle, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. All its fat he shall burn on the altar like the fat of the sacrifice of peace offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him for his sins, and he shall be forgiven. Now we're at the lowest regular person. If any of the common people sins unintentionally, doing any of the things that by the Lord's commandment ought not to be done, and realizes guilt, or the sin which he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring for his offering a goat, a female without blemish, and his sin which he has committed, and he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and kill the sin offering in the place of burnt offering. And the priest shall take some of its blood with its fingers and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. And all its fat he shall remove, as the fat is removed from the peace offerings. And the priest shall burn it on the altar for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be forgiven. If he brings a lamb, so we have a goat, now we have a lamb as a sin offering, he shall bring a female without blemish, lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and kill it for a sin offering in the place where they killed the burnt offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. And all its fat he shall remove, as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall burn it on the altar on top of the Lord's food offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him for the sin which he has committed, and he shall be forgiven. I pray that has been a blessing to you. Now, you might be wondering, Josh, why did you read all of that? Why? Well, because it's God's word. It is the Lord's word. Yes, there's a lot of things that are repetitive. You've learned that from the end of Exodus. A lot of things repetitive, but Lord put it here for a reason. I think part of it is to remind ourselves of the bloodiness in the consequences of sin is pretty big. We also see that there are different rules for those that are closer to the Lord as far as in their job, in their office, those that are leaders, and those of the common folk. There are different things that you offer. It's a big difference if a leader of a country and then a regular citizen of the country does something, or if the whole country itself is doing something wrong. So we read all of it because this is God's most holy and precious word, and I believe every bit of it. Yes, we're going to read 36 or 35 verses in 13 minutes when we get to 1 Peter. In about a month, we're going to be going through smaller sections, and we're going to do 1st and 2nd Peter and Jude in 3 months, the same amount of time that we went through Exodus and Leviticus. We believe it's all God's wonderful word, but we do treat them a bit differently. We'll go through the sacrifices a bit faster, but I will read all of it. We'll go through some of these letters and other things a little bit by bit as we take it in. Pray that's been a blessing to you. I'll see you in the next video.